at 06:14 hours local time on April 20th, 2026, in the steel-gray waters of the Gulf of Oman, a 900-foot Iranian-flagged cargo ship named the MV Tuska made a decision that would ignite the most dangerous maritime standoff since the tanker war of the 1980s. It pointed its bow directly at a line of United States Navy warships and accelerated. What happened in the next 11 minutes and the 72 hours that followed will define the new rules of global trade, naval power, and economic warfare for the next generation. Because this was not a miscalculation. This was a deliberate test of American resolve, ordered from Tehran, executed by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, and answered by the most powerful naval force on the surface of the Earth. To understand the full gravity of what happened, you need to understand the battlefield. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. Through it flows approximately 17 to 20 million barrels of oil every single day, roughly 20% of all petroleum traded globally. Natural gas from Qatar, crude from Saudi Arabia, Emirati refined products, Iraqi exports. All of it funnels through this single, irreplaceable choke point. The United States, recognizing Iran's ability to exploit this leverage in the ongoing war, had established a full naval blockade of Iranian oil exports on April 13, 2026. The blockade was airtight, backed by carrier strike groups, Virginia-class attack submarines, E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft, and a continuous MQ-4C Triton unmanned surveillance orbit at 56,000 feet. Iran had already lost its frigate Iris Dina to a torpedo from USS Charlotte, a Virginia-class submarine, in the Indian Ocean weeks earlier. Its air force was decimated, its radar networks were black. Tehran had one card left to play, the strait itself. 06:14 hours, Gulf of Oman. The MV Tuska had been sitting anchored in the eastern approaches to the Strait of Hormuz since April 19th. At nearly 900 feet in length and displacing close to 100,000 deadweight tons, it was, as President Trump later described it, almost as big as an aircraft carrier. The ship's automatic identification system transponder had been transmitting a falsified cargo manifest. Industrial equipment, the signal claimed. But satellite imagery analyzed by the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency had flagged an anomaly. The vessel's waterline was consistent with a heavily loaded hull, not the light load it declared. The NSA had also intercepted a burst-encrypted transmission from the ship to IRGCN headquarters in Bandar Abbas 14 hours earlier. The USS Bainbridge, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer operating as part of the Blockade Enforcement Task Force, had the Tuska painted on its SPY-1D phased array radar. Every movement was being tracked, recorded, and relayed in real time through the Link 16 tactical data network back to USS Gerald R. Ford and to CENTCOM headquarters in Tampa, Florida. At 06:14 hours, the Tuska's engines surged. Its AIS beacon flickered and went dark. The vessel began making 14 knots directly toward the blockade line. Inside the Combat Information Center of USS Bainbridge, the Tactical Action Officer immediately elevated the threat condition to ThreatCon Bravo. The captain activated the ship's Mark 45 5-inch naval gun, brought the Phalanx CIWS close-in weapon systems to automatic engagement mode, and radioed the Tuska on bridge-to-bridge Channel 16. Iranian vessel Tuska, this is the United States Navy. You are approaching a declared naval exclusion zone. Reduce speed immediately or you will be boarded. No response. The Tuska accelerated to 16 knots. 6:19 hours. Boarding operation initiated. What happened next was not a battle. It was a demonstration. Two MH-60R Seahawk helicopters from Helicopter Maritime Strike Squadron 46 lifted off the deck of USS Bainbridge in a coordinated insertion pattern. Simultaneously, a rigid-hull inflatable boat carrying a naval special warfare team, SEALs from DevGru, was already in the water, having been covertly launched 20 minutes earlier when the Tuska's engines first came online. The SEALs had been given pre-approval authority under the blockade rules of engagement to conduct a non-compliant boarding. The Seahawks, armed with AGM-114 Hellfire missiles and equipped with AN/ASQ-22 electro-optical/infrared sensors, descended to 50 feet above the Tuska's bridge wing and broadcast a final warning in Farsi through their high-powered loudspeaker systems. The vessel's captain, a senior IRGCN officer operating under civilian cover, ordered his crew to resist. Iranian sailors on the cargo deck attempted to activate what appeared to be a container-mounted electronic jamming device, a tactic designed to blind the MH-60R's data links and confuse the boarding team's encrypted communications. The EA-18G Growler aircraft, orbiting at 25,000 feet from Carrier Air Wing 8, instantly detected the jamming emission on its ALQ-218 wideband receiver and responded in under 4 seconds with a targeted AN/ALQ-99 jamming burst that overwhelmed and destroyed the Iranian device's electronics without firing a single shot. The IRGCN sailors on deck froze. Comment: Hormuz. If you saw this coming, the U.S. had planned this for weeks. The SEALs were on the deck of the Tuska by 06:23 hours. The boarding was executed in under 4 minutes. The ship's crew, 28 sailors including 4 IRGCN intelligence officers posing as merchant mariners, was sequestered in the forward crew quarters under armed guard. The captain was separated for immediate tactical questioning. The ship's cargo holds were opened. What the SEALs found confirmed every suspicion: not industrial equipment. Hundreds of tons of Iranian crude oil, concealed under false manifests, destined for buyers who had agreed to circumvent the U.S. blockade. There were also discovered 3 crates of encrypted communications hardware linked to IRGCN Maritime Command, a portable underwater drone system, and what appeared to be magnetic mine components. The last finding triggering an immediate red flash signal to CENTCOM that would set off the most dangerous hours of the confrontation. 7:11 hours. Tehran responds. Iran's supreme leader was informed of the Tuska seizure at 6:58 hours Tehran time. The response was authorized within 13 minutes. The IRGCN's fast boat flotillas in the Strait of Hormuz, dozens of Type 83 and Ashura-class speedboats, each carrying RPGs, heavy machine guns, and short-range anti-ship missiles, were placed at immediate readiness. But the kinetic response was not the fast boats. It was quieter, more calculated, and more dangerous. 2 commercial vessels transiting the eastern approaches to the strait, the bulk carrier MV Epaminondas and the cargo ship MV Francesca, were simultaneously approached by IRGCN naval vessels at 7:11 hours. Both ships were hailed, boarded at gunpoint by IRGCN commandos, and seized. The Epaminondas was moved north between the Iranian islands of Hormuz and Larak. The Francesca's AIS transponder went dark in the same area minutes later. Iran had taken hostages, not people, ships. Vessels carrying the cargo of nations that had not declared themselves parties to the conflict. The message from Tehran was unmistakable. You have one of ours, we have 2 of yours, and this strait belongs to us. 7:48 hours. The mine threat. What the intelligence community had feared most was now confirmed. The magnetic mine components found aboard the Tuska were not isolated. NSA signals intelligence, intercepted and processed through a joint NSA/Cybercom platform running real-time SIGINT against IRGCN naval frequencies, revealed a coordinated tasking order transmitted to at least 6 IRGCN fast boats. The order? Lay influence mines in the central navigation lane of the Strait of Hormuz. Moored contact mines and bottom-sitting pressure influence mines deployed in the strait's 35-meter-deep shipping channel would not merely slow commercial traffic, they would shut it down entirely. The psychological and economic consequences would be catastrophic. Lloyd's of London would immediately withdraw war risk insurance coverage from vessels attempting the passage, rendering the strait commercially impassable without a Navy escort for every single ship. The Brent crude futures market, already elevated by the conflict, would spike toward $140 per barrel. Europe's already strained economy, already showing contraction in its PMI indices driven by the Middle East supply shock, would enter a full crisis. Tehran understood this. They were not trying to win a naval battle. They were trying to collapse the West's political will to sustain the war. President Trump was briefed at 8:01 hours Washington time in the Situation Room. His response was immediate and unambiguous. By 8:35 hours, a formal presidential order had been transmitted to CENTCOM. United States naval forces were authorized to shoot and kill any Iranian vessel observed placing mines in the Strait of Hormuz. This was not a warning. This was a standing fire for effect authorization. 10:17 hours, the submarine barrier. What the Iranian mine-laying fast boats did not know, what they could not know, was that the United States had already established an anti-mine and anti-fast boat submarine barrier in the Central Strait 3 days before the Tuska seizure. 2 Virginia-class attack submarines, their exact identities still classified but confirmed by CENTCOM sources, were operating at periscope depth and below in the shipping lanes, their AN/BQQ-10 spherical array sonar systems and TB-29A towed array sonars providing continuous underwater surveillance of the entire waterway. When the first Iranian fast boat formation of 4 vessels moved into the Central Channel at 10:17 hours, propeller cavitation signatures were detected and classified within 90 seconds. The lead submarine surfaced a communications buoy and transmitted a fire control solution to the P-8A Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft orbiting at 15,000 feet above the strait. The P-8A, equipped with AN/APY-10 Maritime Surface Search Radar and equipped with AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles, descended to 4,000 feet and locked its targeting systems onto the Iranian formation. At the same time, a pair of F/A-18E Super Hornets from Carrier Air Wing 8 checked in on the tactical frequency, armed with AGM-84L Block II harpoons and GBU-38 Joint Direct Attack munitions. The Iranians had brought knives to a gunfight that had already been won before they left the dock. The fast boats slowed. Their commanders, detecting the P-8A's radar emissions on their warning receivers, understood they had been acquired. A tense 12-minute standoff unfolded in the narrow, baking hot waters of the strait as the Iranian commanders radioed back to Bandar Abbas for guidance. The IRGCN headquarters, itself operating under degraded communications following U.S. electronic warfare operations that had jammed or spoofed 3 of their primary command frequencies, sent a single-word response: withdraw. The fast boats turned back. They had not laid a single mine. Aftermath. The world recalibrates. By nightfall on April 24, 2026, the Strait of Hormuz was effectively closed to commercial traffic for the second time in a week. No tankers were making the crossing. The Ocean Jewel, a tanker that had approached the strait entrance at 300 hours Eastern Time, turned around after advancing to within visual range and reversed course east. The Epaminondas and Francesca remained in Iranian custody. The Tuska was being towed to a U.S. allied port facility for evidence collection. Iran's Deputy Speaker of Parliament announced publicly that Tehran had received the first revenue from tolls on the strait, a unilateral toll system imposed on commercial shipping as a de facto claim of sovereignty over an internationally recognized international waterway, a claim that has no basis in UNCLOS or any accepted interpretation of maritime law, and that the United States has declared it will not recognize under any circumstances. Peace talks remained a labyrinth of contradictions. Iran's foreign minister flew to Islamabad to meet Pakistani mediators.
U.S. envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were in the air toward Pakistan, but Tehran's foreign ministry simultaneously announced there were no plans for direct U.S.-Iran contact. The ceasefire, fragile, contested, expiring, had been extended by Trump in a Truth Social post, while Hezbollah simultaneously fired rockets at northern Israel from Lebanon, shattering the ceasefire it was supposed to uphold. The Israel-Lebanon truce was extended 3 weeks by the White House. It meant nothing on the ground. What does all of this tell us about the nature of 21st century warfare? Iran is fighting a war it has already lost kinetically, its navy decimated, its air defense neutralized, its command infrastructure shattered by over 11,000 U.S.-Israeli strikes since February 28th. But it has not surrendered the information and economic warfare domain. By seizing commercial ships, mining international waterways, imposing illegal tolls, and dragging mediating nations into a charade of negotiations while simultaneously escalating at sea, Tehran is attempting to convert military defeat into political leverage, betting that the economic pain radiating outward through the Strait of Hormuz will fracture the Western coalition faster than its own military capacity degrades.
The United States is betting the opposite, that its blockade, its submarine barrier, its carrier air power, and the sheer speed of its integrated ISR strike network can make the cost of Iranian escalation unsustainable before the economic pressure on Europe and global energy markets becomes politically irreversible. That is not a military question. That is a question of political will, of alliance cohesion, and of how long democratic governments can absorb fuel price increases, supply chain disruptions, and the constant drumbeat of crisis before their publics demand an exit. What would you do? Hold the blockade or negotiate? Comment below. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide. The world's entire appetite for crude oil, its plastics, its aviation fuel, its heating oil, all of it passes through those 21 miles. And right now, on both sides of that narrow blue line, the most powerful naval force in history and the most desperate regime in the Middle East are locked in a staring contest. The guns are loaded, the mines are being watched, the submarines are listening, and the entire global economy is holding its breath, hoping that the next move, whichever side makes it, is not the one that cannot be taken back. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never forget, the rules of the global order are not written in treaty halls. They are enforced in places like this: 35 meters of dark water, 21 miles of contested strait, and the men and women who stand the watch between the world you know and the one that could be.